For some fans, part of the appeal of anime is thinking about which characters would be relationship material if they were real. Some anime characters seem like they'd make terrible significant others though. It could be because they treat their canon boyfriends or girlfriends like garbage. Their cartoon relationships are truly disturbing. It could be because they're really insecure and willing to inflict violence on anyone who so much as looks at their crush. It could be because they're just really exhausting to be around. One person's dream date is another person's nightmare, so you likely won't agree with all the selections here. You might even give some a chance despite all the red flags, but hey, no judgment. 14. Haru Yoshida, My Little Monster. Haru Yoshida of My Little Monster definitely lives up to the name of the show. He tries really hard to be decent, but he's terrible at it. Once he even grabs his love interest, Shizuku, claps his hand over her mouth, and threatens to abuse her if she makes a sound. While he's not particularly serious about his threat, it's still a terrible thing to say. Besides that cringeworthy scene, Yoshida just can't get his act together. When Shizuku wants him to leave her alone so that she can do her homework, he gets pouty and follows her to school. He also starts fights with anyone who looks at him, much to Shizuku's distress. Haru Yoshida has some major emotional issues that aren't being addressed by his family, and he seems utterly unable to control his impulsive behavior. That said, as much as Shizuku might like him, she holds off on actually dating him for a long time. Until Yoshida figures out how to control himself, he has no business being someone's boyfriend. 13. Miroku Inuyasha. Miroku of Inuyasha desperately needs to find a girlfriend. Why? Because he's been cursed with what is essentially a black hole in his hand that will consume him if he doesn't pass it on to his own biological child, who could then wield the hole as a weapon. While this is an extremely understandable reason to want to have kids, Miroku handles his situation horribly. He propositions women, using his status as a priest as leverage. He also constantly gropes Sengo despite her objections. Most of his actions are meant to be comical, but that's no excuse. Eventually, Sengo and Miroku end up falling in love and having a bunch of babies, but that doesn't negate the fact that he used to constantly violate her boundaries. 12. Haruai Sizamiya, The Melancholy of Haruai Sizamiya. Fascinating though she might be, the title character of The Melancholy of Haruai Sizamiya is just about impossible to date. Why? Because she's an actual god who remakes the universe whenever she gets bored with it. She only dates or befriends very interesting people. To Haruai, interesting people must have psychic powers, alien qualities, or other types of supernatural characteristics. She's totally willing to exploit or destroy others for her entertainment, and she finds normal activities to be excruciatingly dull. Dating her could be exciting, sure, but it'd also be completely exhausting. 11. Kyuya Sada, Wolf Girl and Black Prince. Kyuya Sada's bad boyfriend behaviors are kind of the point of Wolf Girl and Black Prince, and he certainly is terrible. He's like the Japanese high school student version of Christian Grey with less money and a greater proclivity for verbal abuse. Before meeting Erika Shinohara, a girl who he blackmails and treats like a literal dog, Sada has a bunch of meaningless flings. After meeting Shinohara, he insults her, lies to her, and ignores her, before finally admitting that he reciprocates the feelings she inexplicably has for him. Viewers are meant to feel sorry for him because he has abandonment issues, but that doesn't excuse the fact that he's an abusive jerk. 10. Anna Nishikinomiya Shimonita. If you're interested in a guy, don't chase him around with a vacuum cleaner and threaten to shove things down his pants. Don't bake your love nectar into a batch of cookies for him or put it in his water bottle. Most importantly, don't break into his room and force him to have intercourse. Anna Nishikinomiya of Shimonita does all of these things. She lives in a world that's so obsessed with sexual purity that she has repressed many of her sexual impulses. Accordingly, they come out in the worst ways possible. Would Anna be a good partner in a world that was more accepting of human sexuality? Maybe. A world like that might do a better job at teaching her the importance of consent. As it is though, she's kind of terrible. 9. Sasuke Ichiha Naruto. Okay, so there are plenty of Naruto characters who would make terrible significant others, but Sasuke Ichiha is exceptionally bad. While half the girls who meet Ichiha salivate over him, the heartthrob is decidedly uninterested. He has other things on his mind, like getting revenge on his brother for killing his family, and then getting revenge on the city that used his brother as a pawn to destroy said family. While he does ultimately marry and have a child with Sakura, that seems more about the whole rebuilding his clan thing than actually being a partner. He leaves soon after their union. Sasuke Ichiha isn't a terrible person, but he doesn't have the emotional energy to invest in a romantic relationship. 8. Hedo Frio Shuffle. Hedo Frio of Shuffle has a lot of love to give, but she expresses it in some pretty unhealthy ways. Despite the fact that she and her crush aren't actually dating, she's doting and possessive to the point of absurdity. She and Rin live together, and he tries to help out around the house, but she refuses to allow this, claiming that she wants to take care of him. That's nice, kind of, but also pretty awkward for someone who just wants to be a good roommate. What's worse is, when Rin actually does start trying to date people, Frio loses her it. She physically attacks any girl caught speaking to him, all while claiming that Rin belongs to her. Until Frio learns that people aren't her property, she's definitely not dating material. 7. Yuno Gasai Future Diary. Yuno Gasai of Future Diary is dateable, but that's because you kind of have to date her if she's into you. When Gasai likes someone, she likes them to the point of madness and obsession. For example, she stalks Yukiteru relentlessly, tracking his every movement with her magical diary, and inserting herself into every crevice of his life whether she's wanted or not. Oh, and she also killed her own parents. While she did do it to escape their abuse, she keeps their corpses around and talks to them like they're still alive. That's kind of a lot to deal with. 6. Akane Minagawa Scum's Wish. Akane Minagawa of Scum's Wish is not date-worthy for a couple of reasons. It's virtually impossible to get her to commit to a relationship. She plays the field and lies about it. She goes out of her way to string men along, cultivating their emotional dependence on her, and then laughing at them behind their backs. Minagawa is a music teacher, and she's not above foisting her manipulative tendencies onto students either. She openly mocks Hanabi for having a crush on a man that she's been flirting with, and actually has intercourse with a student. Akane Minagawa has no morals when it comes to the pursuit of things romantic, so she'd make a pretty terrible partner. 5. Light Yagami Death Note. Light Yagami of Death Note is one of the worst possible people to end up in a relationship with. First of all, he'd only date someone that he could use and coerce. For example, he sees Misa Amane and Kiyomi Takada not as people, but as objects who he can manipulate into obedience. He'll laud his relationships with both women, claiming to care about them, but in reality, he happily uses the Death Note to make Takada burn herself alive when it proves convenient. Light Yagami might be charming, but having a genuine relationship with him is pretty much impossible. There's also a good chance that his significant other might end up dead. 4. Aikichi Machimiya Yowamushi Pedal. Aikichi Machimiya of Yowamushi Pedal is a lousy boyfriend. Not only does he abruptly dump his girlfriend Kana the instant he has to start focusing on biking, he's also a complete creep to every girl he encounters. When Machimiya first meets Miki Kanzaki, he throws his arm around her and starts hitting on her, much to the horror of her onlooking friends. He also strokes Fukutami's arms and gropes Izumida's chest, making both of them supremely uncomfortable. 3. Makoto Ito School Days. Makoto Ito of School Days is infamous for being basically one of the worst boyfriends ever. The instant that he realizes that girls find him attractive, he immediately embarks on an odyssey of serial screwing. This could be okay if he were honest about it, but he's not. Instead, He lies to his girlfriends and makes promises of exclusivity that he has no intention to keep. He finally decides to be honest by making out with his new girl in front of his pregnant ex. Basically, Itu is a total scumbag. That said, the girls he pursues aren't that great either, especially Sekai Sayonji. She kills him and chops his head off. No amount of philandering and deadbeat behavior justifies decapitation. 2. Minoru Mineta, My Hero Academia. Minoru Mineta is one of the least popular characters in My Hero Academia for good reason. He's quick to sexualize all of his female classmates' actions, and he even tricks the girls into dressing up like cheerleaders for his personal pleasure. On top of that, Mineta's a huge coward who is more than happy to use other people to protect himself. Whether they see his antics as funny or creepy, few people think that Mineta would make a good boyfriend. 1. Nobuyuki Sugo Sword Art Online. Nobuyuki Sugo desperately wants a relationship with Asuna Yuki, but he's so utterly repulsive that she's uninterested. So is everyone else. Despite knowing full well that Yuki can't stand him, Sugo nearly tricks her father into allowing him to legally marry her while she's in a coma. He also traps Yuki in a virtual gilded cage so that he can accost her whenever he wants. This is how he treats someone who he claims to care about, so it's pretty clear why Sugo isn't boyfriend material. Also, by the end of Sword Art Online, he's in prison, so there's that too.